Did you have some interaction with a Conrad Roy Jr.?
Yes, I did.
And could you please describe that?
Objection.
Overruled.
I responded to an assault call, sir.
Okay, and what did you do when you arrived?
We attempted to find the person that had been assaulted.
Okay, and at some point in time, did you come into the physical presence of Conrad Roy III?
I did.
Okay, and did you make any observations of him?
Yes, his face was swollen, red, and he had some lacerations to his face.
Did you obtain a written statement from him?
I did, yes.
I found myself at a home located on Perkins Lane.
And what did you do when you arrived at that
I
location?
interviewed an older male and a female.
Okay, and do you remember the older male's name?
Conrad Roy?
And did you ask him specifically what happened?
Yes, I did. Before concluding my investigation, a male party was subsequently placed under arrest.
And who was that male party that
The
was
father.
The one you
Mr.
were speaking to?
Correct.
And what was he arrested for?
Assault and battery domestic.
Yeah, you think at first it's kind of embarrassing, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. I know what happened that night with my son, and I know, I was being a parent. And I know things got out of control, and we both fought each other. And I'd do it again, just like that. Sometimes, you say, like my father always said, if you ever take a swing at me, you're gonna get it. It's like you're gonna make sure you don't do that ever again. And I just felt like I had to do the same thing.
Hard to describe the feeling in the courtroom today. Pretty much everyone on edge. Now the defense will present their case. They've already called several witnesses this morning, and things will move forward in this landmark trial.
You have to remember that this case has two families who are basically trying to do the same thing. They both want a version of the story in which it is not their fault. The Roys are hoping for a version of the story where the suicide of their son is Michelle's fault, and that she was waiting for the moment when she could pounce on this kid and make him kill himself and get a bunch of sympathy. And the Carters are hoping for a version of the story where Michelle's actions are not her fault. And that's what Peter Breggin was arguing.
Morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Your Honor. Please raise your right hand. This matter before the court, swear testimony about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
All right, please take a seat, sir. Make yourself nice and comfortable.
I got a call out of the blue from the attorney, Mr. Cataldo. What he said is, Doc, we got this case. We don't know what's going on, and we can't figure out. Give us a hand. I was originally called in to see whether Conrad Roy's medication had made him suicidal. he was on psychiatric drugs, antidepressants. And if you look at the research on what the psych drugs do, they can cause suicide. I concluded it was a contributing factor, but not an overwhelming factor, because there were many other things impinging on Conrad. Conrad was reacting to a very unhappy, angry, and at times violent divorce. We know that. The father charged the mother with assault. There are all these things coming to bear on him. Then I found out that Michelle was on psychiatric drugs too. And so we have these two kids. They're not star-crossed, they're drug-crossed.
When did Michelle Carter start consuming SSRIs?
She started Prozac on February 17, 2011, 10 milligrams. And she's just a young girl then, 14 going on 15.
Okay, thank you.
Prozac greatly increased the risk of suicide in young people her age. And she never should have been given Prozac because she was bulimic, and that would increase the power of Prozac over her. And not long after her first exposure to Prozac, she climbed up on a stool and put a noose around her neck in her closet. Now, at the same moment, Conrad Roy, whom at that point she thought was a sweet boyfriend without any serious problems, was admitted to a psychiatric hospital for a serious suicide attempt. So now Michelle, who's a youngster, who's on Prozac at the time, is dealing with this huge disclosure. And he is saying, I'm not who you thought I was. And furthermore, has announced to her that voices are telling himself to kill himself tonight. Michelle becomes desperate. Conrad won't answer her. And she thinks he's killed himself. Conrad at least 4 times attempted suicide, once nearly killing himself.
He overdosed on acetaminophen. And the EMTs call me. And they asked, they're like, well, he threw up a lot. Do you want him to be seen? I said, absolutely. He almost needed a liver transplant at that time. He said he would never do that again. said, I promise you I would never do that again. I said, you know that if you died, Mom would want to die too. You know that, right?
And how is this relevant to your clinical analysis of this case?
Well, it has to do with the effects of Conrad on what will eventually become her idea taken from him that he's going to kill himself and that all he cares about is doing it swiftly and quickly and not botching it. She's following his lead into a very dark place. Probably the most common adverse effect of antidepressants is nightmares. So this is just spot on. She's clearly out of her mind, and so is he.
You can't look at one text message. You have to look at the totality of their relationship. You have somebody, Conrad Roy, who has been suicidal for a very long time, really at this point in time, intent on killing himself. She, if you look at it for a year and a half, never wanted him to die, didn't want him to kill himself. What caused her to switch?
It struck me that she was in an extremely abusive relationship. This is constant harassing of her while he's not telling family. And at one point toward the end, Conrad tells her, the one thing that will make me hate you is if you tell anyone that I'm suicidal. And she listens. Michelle got it all as this huge pyramid of his misery, and at the bottom of it is sitting Michelle Carter and nobody else.
Conrad told Michelle that his mother knew that he was suicidal. He actually screenshotted her, Michelle, his laptop of methods how to kill yourself. Michelle says, well, didn't she say anything to you? And Conrad responded, no, she just looked at it and walked away. What Conrad is doing is manipulating and lying to Michelle, saying, my mom even knows.
The whole story became deeper. And the theme was running the exact opposite of the DA's witch hunt. In fact, both were victims of the psychiatric drugs.
What is an involuntary intoxication?
Well, by definition, it's an intoxication, which means that the neurochemistry of the brain has been disrupted, and that this intoxication is observable through thoughts, behaviors, activities. They involve, in general, things like impulsivity, impaired judgment.
And specifically, Dr. Bregan, as to Michelle Carter, did you have an opinion of whether or not she was involuntarily intoxicated?
Yes,
And what is that opinion?
she was involuntarily intoxicated. She was taking Prozac, and she then switched to Celexa.
And are you able to pinpoint about when she became involuntarily intoxicated?
Yes, on July 2nd, she begins to help him go to heaven. At this point, she has an involuntary intoxication where she is not forming a criminal intent, I'm going to harm him. She's not doing something she thinks is criminal, this is bad. She's thinking that it's a good thing to help him die, that she can mitigate the circumstances, that she can then go and help his family. And like anybody who's in a hypomanic state, she gets very angry when she's disrupted. This is now the way. She's found a way to finally help.
involuntary intoxication is a diagnosis that I never use, and that most of the colleagues that I know don't use, but that is used in forensic psychiatry. So without any consensus by our profession that it's even real. In some children and adolescents taking antidepressants, it can be disinhibiting. I wouldn't call it drastic, but if you become manic when you're on antidepressant, that's pretty drastic, and that happens in a very small proportion of cases.
You may resume when you are ready, Ms.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning?
You would agree with me at the time, between July 2nd and July 12th, 2014, the defendant was going to camp, correct?
Yes.
Okay. She was interacting with friends at times, correct?
Yes.
She's seeking therapy and talking to her therapist, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree with me that the therapist describes her appearance as good eye contact, well-groomed, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Short-term memory intact, judgment good, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Behavior, no abnormalities, correct?
Yeah.
Her affect is appropriate. Her long-term memory is intact, correct?
Yeah.
Her insight is good, correct?
Yeah.
And you're now telling us that she didn't know right from wrong at that same time.
Well, actually, she thought she was doing absolutely the right thing.
You would agree with me, though, that on July 10th into July 11th, 2014, the defendant is telling friends, specifically Sam Boardman, that Conrad is missing, correct?
Yes.
But at the same time, you would agree with me, she's communicating with Conrad.
Yes.
She's telling people he's missing, she doesn't know where he is, she's getting updates from the family, all while speaking to him, correct?
Yes. It's very strange. I can't find a rational reason why she would ever have been doing this. I think it's part of a very confused, delusional state where she's coming in and out of what's happening, what am I doing?
How about the rational reason that she wanted to know how her friends would react when he killed himself?
No, I can't imagine that would be motivating her to be opening up this horrible, bizarre activity she's involved in. I mean, you would expect her not to do anything like that.
But she's saying she's concerned for him while at the same time talking to him.
Yeah, I think it's really crazy.
And in fact, Sam does, I would suggest to you, she then shows concern, correct?
Well, of course, yeah.
Okay. Focusing on now July 12th into the 13th, 9:48 p.m. To Sam, I'm so fucking stupid. The generator he got the other day, I think that the noise I heard, I just looked it up, they emit carbon monoxide. I think he poisoned himself with it. And so it goes, correct? That's that text message.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, you would agree with me, sir, that there were text messages between the defendant and Conrad Roy about exactly how he was going to kill himself, weren't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So her telling Sam, I think the noise that I heard, I think the generator he got today, I think that was a noise I heard. I looked it up. They can emit carbon monoxide. She already knew that, didn't she?
Yes.
Okay. And now, talking to Allie, she says, ha ha, yeah, but I don't know. He's in a bad place right now, talking about Conrad, correct?
Yes.
She's telling Allie he's in a bad place. He's dead, sir, at that point. Did you factor that in your opinion, then? The fact that she knows he's dead and it's saying, ha ha, yeah, but I don't know. He's in a bad place right now. Did you factor that into your opinion?
Yes, I factored every bit of this into my opinion, yes.
So she's telling one person one thing and other people other things, correct?
Yes, she is.
So now the next morning, July 13th, 2014 at 9:02, her mother texts her, correct?
Yes.
Hi, Michelle, what are you doing? Right? Michelle responds, I'm at home. Mom says, doing what? Michelle responds, nothing, haha. Doesn't tell her mother anything about what's going on, does she?
No.
She only tells her friends, correct?
Yes.
These same friends that she has been asking to hang out with her for the past year and who routinely don't hang out with her. Isn't that true?
Oh, I don't know that.
Would you factor it into your opinion The fact that the defendant wanted to hang out with her friends and her friends didn't have time with her that summer. Could that impact your opinion?
That it turned her into a crazy person who transformed her character, became grandiose, and
No.
encouraged a young man whom she loved and had been working with again and again to get better, that she turned on him and started to encourage him to die? No, I don't think so. She's psychotic, deluded, she's disturbed. Everything you're describing is why I concluded she's got an involuntary intoxication.
You ready?
Yep. So far this morning, we've been hearing from Dr. Peter Bregan that paints a very different picture than what we saw last week in those messages. And the biggest question here now is, will Michelle Carter testify?
Can I call Michelle to the stand tomorrow?
I have no comment. We're going to proceed tomorrow with the continuation of the trial.
Part of the drama of this case was the adult world confronting what teenagers are like.
Guys, can you stop? You've already got her picture.
And I think for the parents, it must be sort of impossible to understand what happened because it's so far from what is, acceptable human behavior, what she did in the last few weeks. And I think the biggest mystery of the story is not why Michelle Carter did what she did, but what Michelle Carter thought she was doing.
What's really interesting about this case is that we have this very detailed record of what was said between them. This detailed record of their minds coming together and interacting with each other. In the past, we wouldn't have had that record. All we would have had was a person commits suicide, and we're all left wondering what happened. Are we talking about young psychopaths? Are we talking about narcissistic personality disorders, borderline disorders? Are we just talking about young, troubled kids who don't have a well-developed frontal cortex and just don't have the self-awareness and the ability to see what they're doing? But now, because we have this record of this dialogue between them, we have this opportunity to see what was going on inside their minds, inside that thought process between the two of them.
The idea that this was a case where a girlfriend killed a boyfriend is really weird. The way that I read it is the relationship was much more Michelle's fantasy and Michelle's idea than it was Conrad's. Conrad was alternately kind of mean to her, kind of sweet to her, kind of negging her for most of the relationship. They really weirdly connected on this slightly mean, slightly competitive level that they both had. They had this kind of game that they would play together. They would finish each other's sentences, they would play weird word games and free associations. And it's like kind of sexy, kind of weird, kind of exciting if you're a teenage boy. They both sort of like this kind of brinksmanship with each other. They talked a lot about, let's meet, let's hang out, when are we gonna hang out? They come to the brink of seeing each other and then they always back away. So their whole relationship was the text messages.
The fact that we now all live our lives via smartphones is completely central to this case. It's every parent's worst nightmare. You have two teenagers connecting in the most cataclysmic possible way. Conrad He found someone who he could confide these thoughts in. And Michelle found this access to immediate sort of intimacy.
When people are communicating through text, strange things can start to happen. You don't necessarily experience the other person as another person. You can't see them, you can't hear them, you can't see their body language. You have this voice with you all day long that will suddenly pop up and say things to you. I think in some ways people experience that as a voice in their head, almost as if it's like an internal hallucination. You're really interacting with these characters inside your mind without really understanding on a more conscious, rational level. These text messages are coming from another person with their own life and their own thoughts and their own feelings.
In some ways, the big moral failing from Michelle has to do with an eerie inability to fully apprehend reality. There's one level of the conversation that is a kid that's gonna kill himself. And then there's another level that's a romantic fantasy. There's an amazing intensity to the messages that's totally incommensurate with the relationship they had before. And what I found is that there was all of these references to different TV shows, to movies, to songs. But by far, the most common source for that kind of language was Glee. Glee is a TV show that is set in an American high school, and the stars are Leah Michele and Corey Monteith, who are not only the stars of the show, but were a couple in real life. And Michelle was obsessed with Leah Michele. So often when she was writing to Conrad or writing about Conrad, she would borrow from text that was in this TV show.
You are my first love. And I want, more than anything, for you to be my last.
And I think she connected with Leah Michele on a kind of profound level that went beyond what a normal teen identifying with a star, might feel like.
A star of the popular show Glee found dead in his hotel room in Vancouver.
In 2013, Corey Monteith overdosed in a hotel room and died. This was a year, basically to the day, before Conrad died. The cast of Glee puts on a tribute episode. Leah Michele sings a song in his honor, and everyone's devastated because the character has died in the show. So it's an incredibly eerie piece of television because you know that this actual actor OD'd in a hotel somewhere in Canada. But in the world of the show, this football quarterback has died tragically, and everyone is singing pop songs to mourn him. And Michelle introduces that to Conrad in October of 2013. Michelle says, I just want you to know how much I love you, and it really made me think of what it would be like if you weren't here, totally out of the blue for what was happening. It's sort of the first moment where you realize that Michelle has like a completely other story that's going on that has nothing to do with Conrad specifically. But the idea that she would be the person in Glee who had a boyfriend who was the quarterback who had sort of tragically died, I think was kind of more real to her than it probably is to most people.
I had it all planned out.
Now what?
I don't know, something different.
Maybe something better.
I don't think that that's possible. He was my person.
One of the eerie parts of the text messages that Michelle sent to her friends, where she quotes from Leah Michelle, is that they don't all come from Glee. They come from interviews that the real actress is giving about her real dead boyfriend to real talk show hosts.
I literally lived every day of my life feeling like the luckiest girl in the whole world. I just thought he was the greatest man.
This is weird. This is really weird. I think it translates to that Michelle had little, if any, idea of who she was. That she identified extremely strongly with this other world, this other life. Alice was a teammate of Michelle's on a travel softball team in the spring of 2012. They instantly became incredibly close. They went to each other's houses, they slept over, they took a team trip to Montreal, and when other kids on the team were going out to eat as a group, they would kind of sneak off and eat together, just the two of them. It was an intense teen friendship that was almost like a love affair for Michelle. Kind of abruptly, right around the time that Michelle met Conrad, Alice cut off contact with her. And in 2014, in the summer, Michelle, for some reason, starts really missing Alice. And this is all happening right around the time that Conrad is really suicidal. It seems to me that a lot of the emotional logic of the case really has more to do with the friendship with Alice than it has to do with the relationship with Conrad. I called Alice and I said, you know, I want to interview you because it sounds like Michelle was in love with you. And I met Alice and her mother. The reason they were meeting me was to refute exactly that story. So they were meeting to say, Michelle is a sociopath, and she made this all up. There was never anything physical about the relationship. And if I didn't feel for Michelle in any moment before that, in that moment, I felt a sympathy for how alone she was. She had this desire for things to be more intense, more like stories than they really were.
She didn't live in reality. Like, she lived in some kind of fantasy, I think. But she's just not a well person, so. How can you be that angry, or how can you be that when someone is not, she's not well? That's all I say. She's not well.
The pattern that would happen in the last few weeks of Conrad's life is Conrad would say, I'm going to do it tonight. Then the next morning, he would be alive. Then a few days later, he would say, okay, I'm ready to do it tonight. I'm going to do it. And then the next morning, he would be alive. July 12th, when Conrad dies, there's a kind of reality flicker where it's not entirely clear that it's actually happened. I'll tell you something really weird. 5 days before Conrad died, Michelle goes to a movie theater and sees The Fault in Our Stars. And at the climax of the movie, the boy, Gus, is dying in a gas station in a Jeep, and he calls his girlfriend for help.
Augustus.
Hazel Grace.
Hi. Oh my God, hi, I love you.
And she calls the police and he gets into an ambulance. So it doesn't seem implausible to me that there were other stories in Michelle's mind that reminded her of what was happening at that moment. And I think the question is whether or not she was kind of writing some story in her head or writing some movie that for some reason had to end with him dying, or whether she literally has no idea what she's done. What is obvious to me is that when he really needed someone to understand how serious it was and to go over his head to the cops, to his mother, she wasn't that person. And that's her kind of tragic failing. She, who wanted so badly to have a best friend or someone she could sort of have this intense dyadic affair with, had the opportunity to do that with this kid who that night needed someone to be his friend and to say, you are being fucking crazy and I'm calling the police, and she didn't do it.
His death is my fault. Like, honestly, I could have stopped him. I was on the phone with him, and he got out of the car because it was working. And he got scared, and I fucking told him to get back in, Sam, because I knew he would do it all over again the next day. And I couldn't have him live that way, the way he was living anymore. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't let him. Those are her words, Your Honor. She says to her friend, if I had done something, if I had just told him that I loved him, he would still be alive.
Your Honor, this is a suicide. As I said in my opening statement, and I say now, what we're dealing with is a suicide and not a homicide. And this is the government's burden, to prove that it was a homicide, a manslaughter under the elements. Proof, not by probable cause, not by clear and convincing evidence, but proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If you go through and you look at who actually created this suicidal situation, he brought her, with all of her baggage, along for this sad journey of his to eventually take his own life.
Despite his issues, Conrad Roy was a very self-aware young man. He knew when he needed help. And you know what he said was the one reason that he wanted to live? His family. Before the defendant got her hooks into him and started telling him to die every day, he was hopeful.
This is a gentleman who sadly was subjected to domestic violence. In fact, he tells that he had daily intrusive thoughts of witnessing domestic violence. Those are his words he's telling his therapist and the counselors in the records, Your Honor.
During the days leading up to this, Your Honor, he told her, "I'm scared. I don't have it in me. Another day wouldn't hurt." Every time he came up with an excuse not to do it, she kicked his feet out right from under him and told him why it didn't matter, why he still needed to die.
Mr. Roy himself stated to Michelle Carter, "I want to die." Straight out, those words, "I want to die." To turn around and say she's bullying him or she got him to do something he didn't want to do, he's asking her, "You want to help?" His words, "You want to help?" He doesn't tell her, "Stop this, don't call me, lose my number, stop texting me, block call," nothing of the like. He continues to use her for his support to carry out his plan. He goes down to Kmart. He doesn't do a U-turn, not seeking any help. Police department down the road a half a mile. He has a cell phone with him. What's he do? He actually, in the phone records, he calls Michelle Carter. The first phone call right there, he calls her. He doesn't call 911, doesn't call anybody else, he calls Michelle. I suggest why? Because he knows that she is encouraging and supporting his plan.
She created the harm, Your Honor, when she told him to get back in the car. He was scared, she knows he's gonna die, and she says, "I could have done something to stop it, and if I had, he would still be alive today." She, by her own admission, she caused his death. She knew at that moment he did not want to die.
The Commonwealth is conflating this idea of he was scared as he didn't want to do it. That's what they're doing. They're saying, Michelle told a friend that Conrad got out of the car and was scared because it was working. So Conrad apparently knew it was working and yet chose to get back in. But because he was scared or afraid, they want to basically replace that word to somehow, therefore, after that, by going back in the car, that wasn't his own decision. He chose to get in that car. He chose to breathe in the fumes. There's no evidence that Michelle Carter has any physical actions whatsoever in this case. It was all of his physical activity.
Did he get back in the car? Yes. But she was the cause of it, Your Honor. She ordered him back in that car, knowing what would happen. It's a new day and age, Your Honor, and the phones that we have now allow you to be virtually present with somebody. People fall in love on the internet and via text. People bully via text and the internet, and you can encourage someone to die via text, and you can commit a crime via text. She absolutely knew what she was doing. She absolutely knew it was wrong, and she absolutely caused the death of this 18-year-old boy. And I ask you to find her guilty.
This world is sick today, in my opinion. No one has any morals, lack of character. I just find it very troubling today, because the right thing to do would have been for her to go get him help. He wanted to get out of the car, I believe. He did get out. She told him to get back in, quote unquote, and do it. I'm sorry, but she deserves manslaughter. Absolutely.
I honestly think it was foul, what she did. She really shouldn't have done that. I mean, if you really love somebody, you don't encourage them to kill themselves. That's absolutely crazy.
It's kind of like murder.
So it's basically murder, is how I see it in my eyes. It's basically murder.
She was pretty much saying, just do it.
But there's nothing illegal.
And then didn't he stop? And she said, what are you doing? Get back in the car. You already have it all set up. You know, just end it already.
Wow.
But that's more of a moral thing, I think.
But there's nothing
She's
illegal
guilty.
about it. No, there's not. She didn't do anything wrong, though. She's not guilty. She
I
didn't do
wouldn't say
anything
that
illegal.
she didn't.
What she did was wrong, but it's not illegal.
That's like me telling you to jump off a bridge. If you jump off it, is it my fault?
Yeah. She would have said to him, jump over the bridge. He would have done it. So therefore, it is her fault.
How can this woman be held responsible for something that she, in essence, did not do, and he had free will over his actions? It's mind-boggling to me. If she was telling him to rob a bank and he robbed a bank, is she responsible for this when he went in and did those actions voluntarily? I don't know. I just don't see how you can punish this girl the rest of her life for this.
My wife and I talk about this, and she thinks in one direction, and I think in the other. That's because we're married. Go figure. She thinks it's more the responsibility of the victim than the responsibility of the young lady. And I can see her point.
I think it was more immoral or unethical, to not report that to somebody. I don't know. I guess it's on the judge how he's gonna rule it.
Certainly wouldn't want to date her next.
With breaking news, the judge has reached a verdict in the Michelle Carter manslaughter trial.
This is a highly anticipated decision of whether Michelle Carter is guilty of involuntary manslaughter in her boyfriend Conrad Roy's death.
Judge Lawrence Moniz took just 2 days to decide this, and he will announce it at 11 a.m.
Michelle Carter's fate now in the hands of the judge who will render the ultimate verdict.
And at the center of this trial, whether it's a crime to tell someone to commit suicide.
Good afternoon, everyone. The law does not require that any explanation as to a verdict be given. Nonetheless, I am of the opinion that some explanation of my verdicts is warranted. I have essentially divided the evidence in this case into 3 components. The first component comprises roughly the period of June 29th, 2014, through the ending of the text messages between Ms. Carter and Mr. Roy on or about July 12th, 2014. The second period commences immediately thereafter through July 13th, 2014. This court first finds that the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the actions taken by Ms. Carter as to the period from June 30th to July 12th constituted wanton and reckless conduct by her and serious disregard of the well-being of Mr. Roy. The Commonwealth has not proven as to that time period that said reckless or wanton behavior caused the death of Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy was struggling with his issues and took significant actions of his own. He secured the generator. He secured the water pump. He researched how to fix the generator. He located his vehicle in an unnoticeable area and commenced his attempt by starting the pump. However, he breaks that chain of self-causation by exiting the vehicle. He takes himself out of the toxic environment that it has become. When Ms. Carter realizes that Mr. Roy has exited the truck, she instructs him to get back into the truck, which she has reason to know is or is becoming a toxic environment inconsistent with human life. This court finds where one's action create a life-threatening risk to another, there is a duty to take reasonable steps to alleviate the risk. The reckless failure to fulfill this duty can result in a charge of manslaughter. Knowing that Mr. Roy is in the truck, knowing the condition of the truck, Ms. Carter takes no action in the furtherance of the duty that she has created by instructing Mr. Roy to get back into the truck. Consequently, this court has found that the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Carter's actions and also her failure to act, where she had a self-created duty to Mr. Roy, constituted each and all wanton and reckless conduct. And this court further finds that the Commonwealth has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that said conduct caused the death of Mr. Roy. Ms. Carter, please stand. This court, having reviewed the evidence and applied the law thereto, now finds you guilty on the indictment charging you with the involuntary manslaughter of the person Conrad Roy III. You may be seated. That verdict is now recorded, and it is in writing as well. This matter will stand continued to August 3rd for a sentencing hearing. Thank you very much.
All right.
Very disappointed with the outcome. However, because the case is still pending, beyond saying I'm disappointed, I'm not going to comment any further. So,
I know you're disappointed, Joel. Are you surprised, though?
Good afternoon. Since we still have to return to court for the sentencing phase of this case, I will keep my comments brief. Although we are very pleased with the verdict, in reality, there are no winners here today. Conrad, an 18-year-old boy, is dead, and a young woman is now convicted of causing his death. Two families have been torn apart and will be affected by this for years to come. This was a unique case that dealt with a lot of important issues in our society today. But in the end, the case was really about one young man and one young woman who were brought together by tragic circumstances.
Keep going, watch out. You have any idea for what should be? When you want the sentence to be?
Are you satisfied with what happened, though? Do you feel like you get some relief?
Mr. Roy, what kind of relief are you feeling right now? How difficult was it? Okay, guys, come on.
Careful
How
behind
difficult
you.
was it for you throughout all this?
The judge, would you like to say anything to the judge?
Let's check. Can you just tell us how you feel? No comment.
Come on, get the door unlocked.
Can you tell us what you think about this verdict? Can you just tell us what you think about the verdict?
I'll get that one, don't worry.
Do you feel like justice was served here?
Watch out. Seriously,
there are many verdicts that you'll see, whether I've been involved in them or many cases that I haven't been involved. You'll say, well, this prosecution really has the law on their side, they have the facts on their side. I don't think that that was the case here. I think there are plenty of people who are still scratching their head, thinking, how is this a crime? How could the judge do what he did and find her guilty on this evidence? In rendering his verdict, he went so far as to say, up until the point in time that Conrad was in the truck with the water pump going, it was on Conrad Roy. Michelle would not have been found guilty. Then it turned on a dime and said, however, when he got out of his truck, she had a self-created duty, knowing that he was getting back into the car to prevent it when she wasn't physically present. that's when it obviously went downhill. And that was somewhat of a surprise to hear him saying that.
The huge question at the heart of this case is whether Michelle told Conrad to get back in the truck. It's a big question because there's metadata for the phone calls, but there's no recordings. So there's absolutely no way to know whether Michelle telling him to get back in the truck was an event that took place, whether it was something that she wanted people to think had happened, whether it was like a manifestation of her guilt. Why did Michelle wait 2 months to tell Samantha Boardman, I told him to get back in the truck?
I don't think we can know that Michelle's story is at all true. It's not, I don't think it's a true story. There's no text she said it. There's no recording of a phone that she said it. Michelle frequently made contradictory statements. One of the most striking was that she told her friends that she had never had sex. Then she told a friend that she had had sex with Conrad. Then she told a friend that Conrad had raped her, that he had forced himself on her.
What's scary about Michelle's description of being assaulted is that her friends don't believe her. That there's a sense that, like, Michelle says some stuff that's true and some stuff that's not true, and everyone kind of knows it.
I didn't see the DA bringing that up and saying, well, Michelle was raped by Conrad. How do we know she was raped by Conrad? She actually told somebody in a text. The DA said again and again she was a liar who couldn't be trusted because the DA was obsessed with not making her sympathetic without realizing she was undermining her own case. But this is the constant twisting by the DA of data so that it became impossible to disentangle. Most of America believes that she texted him this in writing.
According to prosecutors, Carter even texting him to get back in the truck when he has second thoughts. Get back.
And when I meet people in airports, and I'd say to them, hey folks, do you know about this lady, who supposedly told her boyfriend to kill himself? Oh yeah, she texted her to death. I said, would you believe that there was never anything written down? We have no written record? No, Doc. And people would get mad. They'd say things like, fake news again.
They were just cherry picking when to believe Michelle and when not to believe Michelle. We are appealing the verdict, and we'll appeal it for as long as it takes. To now treat this juvenile as somebody who committed a homicide, I think is unfair, unjust, and illegal, and I think eventually the court system will see it.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth is asking this court to impose a sentence of not less than 7, nor more than 12 years in state prison. Your Honor, as the evidence proved, the facts in this case are egregious. There is no earthly reason why Conrad Henry Roy should not be here today with his loving family, enjoying life, sharing his many gifts with the world, but he is not. And the reason he is not here is the defendant. Michelle Carter, her actions killed Conrad Roy. She ended his life to better her own. For all of these reasons, Your Honor, the Commonwealth respectfully asks this court to impose our recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn. Who speaks for the defendant? No. Mr. Cataldo, do you have any evidence to present?
Your Honor, I will summarize by saying, as this court is well aware, we're guided with the idea in the juvenile justice system that the goal is not punitive, but yet rehabilitative. Ms. Carter was 17 years old at the time. We have a body of law from both the United States Supreme Court as well as the SJC about the adolescent brain development which a court can consider on sentencing. And there is the clear body that says adolescents are not as culpable as full-grown adults. Ms. Carter will have to live with the consequences of this for the rest of her life, with the publicity that this case has gained. That will be substantial. I think treatment is appropriate in this particular case for Ms. Carter. Ms. Carter does regret what happened. She also sent a letter to the probation department where she accepts responsibility for her actions, her words, her letter. The court has reviewed all this. Your Honor, I suggest that she is not a danger to the public, and in the remedial system, the juvenile system, probation is appropriate. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
All rise. This court is now in session. Be seated, please. No talking while the court's in session.
You need to understand, all of you, that this court has not, nor should it, allow any emotional response to this case to enter into its determinations in any way. Everyone is entitled to a decision devoid of any emotion with respect to this case. Now, I know that there has been significant media coverage of this case. I assure you that I have steadfastly avoided any of that. But by the end of today, people will wonder why what has happened has happened. People may wonder why all of this has happened. I have not found that Ms. Carter's age or level of maturity or even her mental illness have any significant impact on her actions. She was a bright young lady, did well in school, and I am satisfied that she was mindful of the actions for which she now stands convicted. On the other hand, even if the age and maturity level of the person at the time that they have committed the crime doesn't garner a great deal of significance, the fact that they are still of that young age offers a greater promise of rehabilitation. Ms. Carter, please stand. Ms. Carter, a guilty finding having entered on the indictment charging you with the involuntary manslaughter of Conrad Roy III, now sentences you to 2.5 years in the Bristol County House of Correction. 15 months of said sentence shall be deemed a committed sentence, and the balance thereof shall be suspended until August 1st of 2022. That is the sentence of the court. You may be seated. Mr. Cataldo, do you wish to be heard?
I do, Your Honor. May I approach?
You may.
Your Honor, what I have just filed is a motion to stay the execution of the sentence.
All right, let me take a look at it, please.
Okay, thank you.
I guess we have all come to know each other a little bit. I anticipated this motion, Mr. Cataldo, and I took some significant time to review the case of Commonwealth versus Hodge, which is found at 380 Mass 851. The conviction may be reversible, but the time spent in prison is not. I am satisfied that there is an issue worthy of presentation to the appellate court. In fact, this court believes that the wisdom of the appellate court will be of instruction now and going forward. I don't know what the appeals court will do. I don't know if it goes to the SJC, what the SJC will do. But I am satisfied that a grant of a stay through the Massachusetts court system only is warranted. This order will not encompass anything with respect to the federal system. Is there anything further, Mr. Cataldo or Mr. Madeira?
1 minute, please. We're all set. Thank you.
And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
All rise.
I don't understand how a month ago it's a guilty verdict, giving the family hope that there might be some kind of justice, to just have her go home tonight and have a nice meal. I just don't get it. Like I said, it's saying to me, I don't have a law degree, but it's saying as long as I'm under 18, I can bully anyone.
Are you pleased with the stay?
Very much so, yes. Yes.
You have to remember, people were totally split about this case. So the reason that it's so interesting to me, the difference between the conviction and the sentencing, is that it expresses the complete kind of craziness that this case drives people to in terms of trying to come up with one objective conclusion of what should happen to Michelle Carter.
This appeal lingers to 2022. Conceivably, she would never serve time in jail.
Conceivably, yes.
It's like you were responsible, it was involuntary manslaughter, but you can basically never go to jail? I would be surprised if she serves time.
I have reviewed the Commonwealth's motion and considered the arguments just presented to the court. The court now allows the Commonwealth's motion to revoke the stay of sentence. Ms. Carter will now be taken into custody. This matter is adjourned. Thank you very much.
All